Of course, we begin here with our big story. Donald Trump pushing for presidential immunity in the special counsel's election interference case against him. The former president and 2024 Republican frontrunner appearing before a panel of 3 appeals court judges today. Now, he wasn't required to attend. He did so voluntarily, even though the Iowa caucuses are less than a week away. Speaking after the hearing, Trump denied any wrongdoing, warning that the case against him will, quote, set a bad precedent.
When they talk about threat to democracy, that's your real threat to democracy. And I feel that as a president, you have to have immunity. Very simple. And if you don't, as an example, if this case were lost on immunity and I did nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong, I'm working for the country.
Well, in the meantime, judges today repeatedly questioning Trump's legal team on his claims that he can't be prosecuted because the lawyers claim his actions fell within his official duties as president. So here's one of the exchanges between them at today's hearing.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is no.
My answer is qualified yes. There's a political process that would have to occur under the structure of our Constitution, which would require impeachment and conviction by the Senate. In these exceptional cases, as the OLC memo itself points out from the Department of Justice, you'd expect a speedy impeachment and conviction.
Well, special counsel Jack Smith's team has rejected Trump's claims as baseless, saying that presidential immunity in this case would allow a future president to take bribes or commit crimes with impunity. So joining us now is our ABC News legal contributor and former associate dean at the Yale School of Law, Asha Rangappa. Asha, thank you so much for being here with us. And let's first start with that exchange that we just played for everyone. And you and I have spoken about this a little bit, and you talked about the terminology here, testing the limiting principle. And so we kept seeing these hypothetical situations playing out today, and they were quite extreme. What's your take?
Well, I think the judges were really doing the right thing because this is a novel theory that would have enormous ramifications for the institution of the presidency. And basically what Trump's lawyers are arguing, excuse me, is that accountability for an illegal act, even something that is taken under the guise of an official duty, like selling pardons, or in their hypothetical, ordering SEAL Team 6 to murder your political opponent, that accountability and rule of law would rest in the hands of a highly partisan and very rare procedure of impeachment and removal. And as we've seen, that's very, very difficult to achieve, which would really create a very bad result for our rule of law. More importantly, by conceding that a president could be prosecuted even under some circumstances for an official act, Trump's lawyers actually shot their own argument in the foot that he has absolute immunity. So this was, I think, a tough day for Trump's lawyers.
It seems like you sort of questioned the fact that his lawyers would even double down on some of their arguments.
Well, I think you want to be able to go in and really create a limiting principle that would make sense, especially when what you're asking a court to do is create a very new and sweeping interpretation of the Constitution. In fact, you know, there's a principle called constitutional avoidance, which means that courts try to avoid making big constitutional pronouncements. You want to give them something a little narrower, something easier to hang their hat on. And so the fact that it was a go big, go home, and I'm going to take it to this crazy North Korea style, system in this hypothetical did not give, I think, the judges a lot to work with in terms of a reasonable judicial opinion.
And that's interesting in terms of, courts essentially kind of trying to avoid setting some major precedent here. Trump attorney John Sauer highlighted again and again, essentially their central argument that permitting Smith's case to move forward, in their opinion, would create, quote, a frightening future ahead for the country. So what is your take on that argument?
Well, I think that the special counsel's team really had a good response to that. They pointed to a lot of historical examples where presidents have been investigated. I mean, we've had many special counsels in the past with Ronald Reagan and Iran-Contra, with Bill Clinton and the Paula Jones case. And he said it's actually very rare for prosecutors to take the step of prosecuting a president. We've seen that already. And that what makes this unprecedented are the very specific facts of the case. And what I think was really important there is they actually gave the court that narrower opportunity. They said, look, you don't have to make big pronouncements about absolute immunity or the Constitution. You can just say that immunity doesn't exist for the type of conduct that is at issue here. And I think that was a really smart move.
Okay, and Asha, after the panel rules, the losing party can then appeal to, my understanding is both the circuit court or the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court. And Trump's lawyers are already asking today to just put their decision on hold if they're going to rule against Trump because they plan to appeal. What's your take on them stating that outright?
I think that would be a very typical move for his team if Trump does not win this appeal, to ask the court to stay the ruling, meaning it won't, take effect while it goes to either the entire circuit en banc, meaning all of the judges, or up to the Supreme Court. I think that I do think that what the court says here may be the final say, though, because, if they find that kind of narrower, reasonable ground, the Supreme Court may not really want to take this on at all. It'll be interesting to see if they decide to.
It certainly will be, and I know that you'll be following it right along with us. Asha Rangappa, our thanks as always to you. And I want to bring our big story to our panel now. So joining us today is our ABC News contributor and SiriusXM radio host, Mike Muse, along with ABC News contributor and former Republican Congressman for Virginia, Barbara Comstock, and Democratic strategist and president of Next Gen America, Christina Sinsoon Ramirez, and ABC News contributor and op-ed columnist for the LA Times, Elsie Granderson. Thank you all for being here with us. And so, Barbara, let's start here with you. There's a lone Republican judge on this three-judge panel who expressed some concern about, quote, opening the floodgates for politically motivated prosecutions of future presidents. And Barbara, Trump's attorney warned of this sentiment. Do you share that concern?
No, not at all. And I was part of a group of former Republican officials who did join an amicus brief to say that President Trump should not, or any president should not, have this absolute immunity that he seeks. And I should point out that Trump's own attorneys during his second impeachment said that he was not immune the way he is arguing today. And that was also brought up in the case, saying, reminding him that in his second impeachment, that he argued that, hey, you don't have, you may not like the, you can't do this to me while I'm a former president, but the courts can go after me for criminal activity. And I believe his attorney today said, well, that wasn't me. So basically, you have Trump's attorneys now saying that he's above the law. And of course, the court today was very skeptical of that. And I do think they will reject that argument.
Skeptical is a word we keep hearing over and over again today. Christina, to you, after his court appearance in D.C., Donald Trump claimed that if the court finds that he doesn't get presidential immunity, then President Biden should also not get immunity, meaning that he too could be charged after leaving office. A lot of people talking about Pandora's box potentially being opened. Is that a concern of yours at all?
Look, I think this is why we're going to court. We're trying to set the precedent and the rules and the parameters. And what Trump is arguing is so outside of the norm. He is trying to argue that he is above the law. You even heard Judge Karen Henderson say it's paradoxical that he's arguing that his constitutional responsibility to faithfully execute the law allows him to break it. So I think, what we're going to see from Trump is we're going to see him to try and continue to pursue every single legal avenue to avoid prosecution and accountability. And you have to remember that the most recent poll showed that a quarter of Trump supporters showed that he was found guilty for a crime that they wouldn't vote for him if he was convicted. So he's looking at these numbers, and him running for president again is one of those strategies. I'm hopeful that these judges are going to uphold the rule of law and show that it applies to everyone.
And the judge that you mentioned there was appointed by George H.W. Bush, so a good note there. And LZ, to you, even if Trump loses this appeal, is it still a win for him at all because this will delay things?
Well, it's a win for him in terms it gives him an opportunity to continue building a case for his grievance, for his supporters. You know, we may not know what the outcome is going to be in terms of whether or not he'll be able to, avoid being held accountable. But right now, heading to 2024, it's also about how his voters feel about him. And he's arguing not to be held accountable. And how can Democrats use the argument that Trump is using right now, which is not to be held accountable, against them? That to me is like really the fascinating political aspect of this. I'm not a lawyer. I can't tell you how this is going to pan out. I've been reading the tea leaves. It doesn't look like it's going to work out for him legally, but from a political perspective, if he can maintain this grievance argument that he's been building on and use this what's happening today to build on that, to hold on to his base, he might still end up being elected president despite that 25% saying they wouldn't vote for him.
Right. I mean, he just continues to lead by astonishing numbers in the polls, LZ. And Mike, let's take
Absolutely.
it to you. In Jack Smith's filing, pleading to the Supreme Court, if you will, to expedite this process, he wrote that the nation has a compelling interest in a decision on the respondent's claim, on his claim of immunity. So, Mike, what is the pulse of the nation when they start to hear this argument that Trump feels, again, like he should be granted immunity?
I think that's a really key element that Jack Smith has hit on, because a lot of what the nation and voters are often frustrated with is this exceptionalism that comes with elected officials, no matter what, if you're on the local level, state level, or the federal level. There seems to be this air of elitism. There seems to be this air of they make rules that don't even govern themselves, that they make policy that only benefit themselves. And so if you allow a president to have absolute immunity, then that's only adding to this narrative of what the American public already has a conception of elected officials of. Then you get into this idea of monarchy and a king, and then you ultimately, Kana, which I really found interesting about the slippery slope, that if he's allowed to have absolute immunity, what other candidates would we have start entering into races, in particular running for the president, if they know that they can 4 to 8 years have no laws be beholden to them?
Right, as you allude to the Pandora's box that so many people mentioned today. Mike, John, Christina, and LZ, thank you so much, and make sure to stay with us.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.